Our first speaker, Chris Scheid, is the director and shareholder of ProAdvice based at Victor Harbour. Chris works with farming families, family corporates and small and medium-sized enterprises in a range of roles as a management consultant, client manager and as a trainer in farm management courses. He is assisting farming businesses throughout South Australia to discover and meet their business goals, adapt to industry change, understand the financial performance of their business and manage intergenerational succession. Chris's talk today is about the importance of business performance and the role AgTech plays. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Graham. Thanks to Sheep Connect for the opportunity to speak today. Previous life I was at Narracourt for about 10 years, primary industries at Struan. That was a good learning ground and serving ground, and there's some familiar faces I see in the audience. And then prior to that, I moved to Victor Harbour. Today, look, I just really wanted to look today. I think there's a lot of money around with clients that I'm working with at the moment in the red meat industry, and perhaps there is, and hopefully there's with you. There's a lot of profits, there's a lot of cash. To me, the easy thing is perhaps we can loosen the belt and perhaps spend willy-nilly, but to me, prudent investment decisions with the profits that we have and the cash we have help us be more resilient for poorer years. So the saying is, it's what you do in the good years that determines how you survive the bad years. And I want to have a conversation around that today. I want to cover these sort of 5 topics. So I want to just look at profit optimisation versus taxation minimisation. So which sort of business model do you run? If profit isn't quite there in your business, then how do we design a business to be profitable? And I'll work through a live client case study there. I want to look at investment decision making again. So when you do have profit, what's an objective way of actually working out where to invest? I'll go through some 10 principles of the top 10% producers we're working with and just a quick summary. So that's us. So we do tax compliance for about 5,000 entities a year. We've got 25 accountants in ProAdvice and bookkeepers, offices in Geelong, Hamilton, Launceston and myself soon to be in Adelaide. So we do 5,000 entities a year. We do 1,000 BASs a year, 250 super funds and those ancillary things. I work in that space there. So I work in the strategy and planning section. So I assist producers with business direction. I help them with succession planning. And when it comes to succession planning, I also are a client manager and I coordinate their other advisors. So that's ProAdvice, but these are other advisors that we collaborate and work with. So I have annual general meetings with clients and we have the investment advisor, the accountant and the bank manager attend. And when it comes to, for example, succession planning, I work with bankers and solicitors to help with client solutions. So my role is in there, but also as a client manager integrating clients' professional services. To look at it another way, here's income, here's direct costs. Income minus direct costs equals your gross margin. Less your overheads equals your profit. Pay the bank back finance equals the net operating profit, and that's what you have to keep and that's what you have to invest. So who helps you with income? So income is production times price. So you might have an agronomist or a livestock advisor helping you on the production side, right? And you might have a price risk management person assisting you with some forward pricing. The agronomist helps design, the livestock advisor helps design the combination of inputs for your production system. So really your agronomist and your livestock advisor are working from the gross margins up. Who's helping you manage overheads? Who's helping you manage them so you get them in the right combination? Who's helping you redesign so that you can perhaps lower overheads? Who's helping you manage profit so that the combination of costs leads to the profit that you're looking to design? The bank looks after the finance after you sign on, etc., for your loan covenants. The bank, that determines your interest. So then who's helping with net profit after that? So at ProAdvice, so I work across those levels. I don't come out and scan, use, etc., but I help to ensure that the combination of income is right for the scale of the business, for the asset, that the direct costs are right, the gross margin, the overheads are right size, the profit is designed, and we've got interest at the right size. So at the end of the day, we've got some profit to invest in AgTech, repay debt, invest off farm, etc. So that's a little bit about what I do. Profit optimisation versus taxation minimisation. What's profit? We better start at what profit is. What's profit? I'll give you a hint. This is the interaction part, guys. What's profit? No wrong answers, all right answers. What you got left. Okay, so it could be more cash at the end of the year. Phew, I got the right order right, didn't I? That was lucky. So it could be more cash at the end of the year. That's an important consideration. It could be just looking at taxation financials. It could be looking at the profit and loss in your taxation financials. Is that the profit you're making when you look at your taxation financials? It's not, because there's a different treatment for tax, particularly with relation to livestock values, land at cost, depreciation. So if you're managing your business looking at taxation financials in terms of on making a profit, right, you might as well toss a coin because 50% chance you're right and 50% chance you're wrong. What's profit? It's got something to do with the balance sheet. Profit really is a true profit is an increase or a change in your balance sheet. One level here, next level. So a change and increase in your balance sheet from one year to the next is a true profit as measured by a profit and loss statement. How do we do it? So, and I'll show you this in the case study. So how we do it is we use the taxation financials, given we do 5,000 family entities a year, we might as well use what the accountants what they do. We use them and we change the 4 or 5 things that the tax office allow the treatment of: depreciation, imputed labour, land at cost, and livestock values. We change them into management accounts. So we take the income, the trading inventory change, like the increase in herd or increase in flock or decrease in herd and flock. Income plus your trading inventory gives you gross profit. Less your direct costs gives you your gross margin. Less overheads, cash and non-cash overheads, gives you an EBIT, gives you a profit. Earnings before interest and tax. So there's your profit. Take away interest and a bit of tax, and there's your net farm profit. So with clients, we change the value of livestock to be a real value, rather than the $20 for cows and $4 for sheep. We change it to a real value, and that projects a proper trading inventory. We take the sales of wool and sheep, etc., and crop. That gives us a real gross product. We take the direct costs, and then we change overheads. We include a real depreciation rate rather than the instant asset write-off depreciation rate that's around at the moment. And we apply an imputed labour. So all we're doing in terms of calculating a true profit is removing the subsidies from your business. Pay yourself what you're worth, work out what your machinery depreciation rate is really, value of livestock really, and the profit down the bottom is a real profit. Okay? So that's yes, and that's no. Okay, let's practice. So yes, no. Okay, or a grunt for no, that's okay too. Okay, good. Profit optimisation. Question number 2 to the audience. This is not a trick question. What are the outcomes? What do you get if you minimise tax? If your focus is to minimise tax, what do you get? You're jumping ahead of me. What's the first thing you get if you focus on minimising tax? You get those things. You don't have to pay tax. Yep. So consider this. If you've got a $300,000 tax bill this year, you've got to have additional deductions of about $1 million at 30% tax rate to pay no tax. Okay, now that's easy to buy a header at $1 million and pay no tax because you get an instant asset write-off for this financial year. But what do you do next year to minimise tax? Do you end up having shed fulls of quad bikes, etc., or shed fulls of tractors? Shed fulls of headers? Do you go into the header business, Graham? Okay. The other implication of having a taxation minimisation focus is there's often less profit or no profit and there's often less cash, right? Another way to minimise tax is just load yourself up with farm management deposits, $800,000 per person. Okay, there's your $1 million. There's your $1 million tax deduction to get your $300,000 write-off on your tax. What's the source of the $800,000? What's the source of the header? How are you going to fund that? Question 3. Okay, you might have to go to the bank, right? Or you're going to have to dip into cash reserves. So in many respects, it's folly. To me, it's folly to be spending 100 cents in the dollar to save 30 cents in the dollar tax. Am I saying to you to not minimise tax? Absolutely not. What am I saying? Do everything you can to design a profit into your business and then get the best advice. Get the best advice from your accountant. Get the best advice from your accountant to minimise your tax. Work with people to structure a profit into your business and then get good advice to reduce tax. Okay, I might wear 2 hats today, so I might come back to them. Okay, your borrowing ability is threatened. What are the outcomes if we have a profit optimisation focus? Okay, well, you will be paying tax. Right? And with the clients I work with, the accountants in our business, we aim for about 15 to 25 cents in the dollar tax. If you're trading your business in a company, you should be paying no more than 25 cents in the dollar tax. But what we find is at 15 to 25 cents in the dollar tax, there's enough money left over after you pay tax to do what? What are your choices? To have fun. Okay, go on a holiday, so personal expenditure. What else can you do with after-tax profit? Reinvest where? Reinvest into your business, or you can reinvest off farm. Okay, and then the 4th thing you can do is, who else owns part of your business? Who owns part of your business if you've got debt? The bank, so pay back debt. So you cannot repay debt if you're not paying tax. You cannot repay debt if you're not paying tax. So it's good to pay tax. So paying tax and having a profit optimised business gives you a profit, gives you a surplus, it gives you things to invest in, as you pointed out there. We can invest on farm, off farm, we can repay debt, we can live better. And to me, they're all good choices to do with profitability. And I remember back in the 1990s, after the wool price crash, for about 10 or 15 years, there was no profit, there was no choice. There's been some hard times some people have gone through in this room. Sorry? 20 years of hard times, yeah. So in summary, if we have a profit optimisation, which had this one, if you work with your advisor to optimise profit, yes, you'll be paying some tax. Yes, you'll have some cash at the end of the financial year. You'll have some profit. It's a bit easy to repay debt. You've got choices. And what's the bank view? If you've got a profit, the bank want to lend you money and help grow your business. With a minimisation, a tax minimisation focus, you don't pay tax, bonus, right? There's not a lot of cash left over. There's not much profit. It's a bit harder to repay interest. There's very few choices. And the banks will lend you up to an extent until your balance sheet's no longer able to support. Okay. If profit's not there in your business, what are the levers we need to pull to be able to improve profitability? So these are just a quick 5 or 10 minutes here about the levers to pull that I work with clients, that I work out with clients to look at their taxation financials, turn them into management financials, work out which of the 3 levers I've got to pull and to improve profitability. So we'll have a little bit of a dive. Many of you have seen this before. So very quickly, if we are to design a business from scratch and we've got no land, we've got no livestock, we've got no people going to earn money, but the bank will lend us money, right? We need to have some people, we need to lease some land, we need to have labour, we need to have machinery, we need to have a phone. Okay, what are all those costs called? All here, they're all overhead costs. Okay, we have our sheep or our cattle business and we shear sheep, we sell cattle, we've got animal health costs, we've got vet costs, etc. What are all those sorts of costs called? All direct costs. So if we add up our overheads and add up our direct costs, we have total costs. If we sell some sheep, sell some cattle, right, we've got income. And at that point there, it's called break even. And above that line, we've got profit. And above that line, we've got loss. If we're here, 3,000 ewes, 300 cows, and we're at break even, what can we do to improve profitability? What can we do? We could increase output, so we call that increasing turnover. So it might be, for example, improving lamb survivability. If we go from 120 to 130% more lambs, we've got more turnover. So as a result of more turnover, our income is there, our costs are there, that we're in profit. Number one, yes. What else could we do? Yeah, so yes, you could do. We could scale up. Let's get an appropriate level of overheads for our existing business. It is something to do with overheads. So what are the two typical overheads in a business that I come across are people and machinery. And what's the cost of owning machinery? With depreciation, right? And the cost of people is labour costs. So if we can redesign a business to rely on less machinery and less people, then by reducing overheads, by lowering through to here, our break-even comes back a little bit. So that's number two, so overheads. What's another thing we can do? We could decrease our direct costs. What's an example? Can you think of an example? I'll give you, while you're thinking about that, Graham, I'll think of an example. So yesterday I was with a client at Freeling. He grows 3,000 tonnes of grain. We spend $3,000 a year on grain marketing, so $1 a tonne. So what does he have to get? What income does he have to get a return? He's got to make $3 a tonne more, $3 a tonne minus $1 a tonne. So he's only got $1 a tonne cost, so he can spend more of his direct costs to get more income. Okay, so that is an example of increasing your direct costs to improve your gross margin. Have you got one about reducing direct costs, Graham?
Might be able to do a lot of soil testing and then decrease your fertiliser.
Okay, in a cropping sense, yes. So you can do variable rate technology. So those things, increasing direct costs or reducing direct costs, right, affects production. Production price is your turnover. So we're talking about gross margins. So that's what we can do. When I visit a client, that's what we can do. We turn the taxation financials into management, and I look at overheads, turnover and gross margin. And they're the only things you can do in a business. So if you don't have profit, there'll be one of those three things that's holding your business back. That's how we calculate them all. So gross margin is just how much of your income that you retain after you pay direct costs. And for grazing businesses, I like to see no more than a 30% spend in direct costs. Cropping 35% spend. Overheads is really what's the combination of overheads that gets spent from your gross profit, 35%. So I missed turnover. Turnover is how much income you get from your combination of assets. $15 of income for every $100 of assets. And then operating profit, if you get these ratios right, you end up with a design business with 30% EBIT on turnover. So improving business profitability, if we've got high overheads, to me they're about people and machinery. So what can we do? So I'm working with a client at the moment on Kangaroo Island. There's 3 families in a 600,000 turnover business. Right, so my metric of a scalable business is 1 family per 600,000. So I've got a succession planning issue there, and I've got to look at some other things explore some contracting and some other things off farm to be done to make that scalable. So that's got a high overhead business. It's got a people issue. Often you can substitute machinery for cropping. Overheads rely on a business redesign. How do we rely less on machinery in a grazing business? How do we rely less on people in terms of running the business? Is often a succession planning issue. Turnover. So turnover, we're looking to get $15 of income for every $100 of assets. Turnover is about producing more and getting paid for it more. So any of those two levers, produce more and get paid for it more. Grain producer yesterday, we were looking at, and we nearly had 20% of next year's crop forward sold at $540 a tonne Aussie. Except the bank ANZ put on covenants in terms of what percentages you're allowed to forward sell. But $540 a tonne was 95 percentile for cereals, so he's not going to go broke if we forward sell there. So that's examples of what we can do to improve turnover. And gross margins is the combination of improving turnover, reducing direct costs, or both. So they're the sort of things that I do in terms of a profit sense: overheads, turnover, and gross margin. There are three questions the banks ask, and not in any particular order. Can you service the debt? So banks are interested to see what your percentage of lease and interest cost is of your gross profit. Banks are interested to see how many times your interest and borrowing costs are covered by your profit. Banks are interested to make sure there's no more than 3-to-1 debt to income. That talks about viability. Second thing, banks are interested in security. So if you can't repay, they need to have security so that they can get their money back. And banks take on security. And loan-to-value ratio depends on banks and different bank rules. And the final thing that banks look at is if you can repay debt and if they've got security covered, they simply come out and ask you each year, would you like some more money? And that's banking. If we get design all right, if we get the profit design, and if we get the finance design, the banking design right, there can be good profits. Here's just a little picture of when we get it right and when we get it wrong. So if our turnover is how much gross profit we make from our assets, if we're turning over and making $15 for every $100 of assets, let's represent that with a $100 bill. If our direct costs are right-sized for our scale of enterprise, then we get a gross margin that's at benchmark, $65. If our overheads, if our people and machinery is right-sized, then we get 35% overhead ratio. And that combination there gives us a projected EBIT, a projected profit of 30% of turnover. If our finance costs are right-sized at 15 cents, $15 for every $100, then there's $15 left over then you pay tax. And what do you do with that? What can you do with that? What are the four things you can do with that? Pay off debt, go on a holiday, pay yourself better, invest off-farm and invest on-farm. They're your choices. They're your choices from profit. Right? If your business is not designed well and designed poorly, if your turnover's right-sized, if your direct costs are a bit higher than what they need to be, your gross margin's out, if your overheads, if you've got too many people and too much machinery, if they're not right-sized, then that's your profit. But if your interest is right-sized, then there's a negative net farm profit. There's no tax to pay, okay, but there's less choice. Who gets the blame in this business? When I present to the client, well, you've got a negative net farm profit. Who gets the blame when you look at that little picture? Who do you reckon gets the blame? Who does the client think that's at fault here? I'm at a different audience here, Jody, because usually the bank gets the blame. Right? The bank gets the blame. If we didn't have to pay all that finance, then I would have had that profit. Right? So sometimes I lead with a question and I don't get the answer. But you're right. Often the bank gets the blame. If we didn't have the interest, we would have had the profit. But the problem is the design of the business. Here it's gross margins and here it's overheads. There's an indication that there's people and there's machinery issues here, and there's a cost issue there. Quick case study. So here's a case study here: 450 mils of rain, 7,000 acre family farm, lucerne-based pastures, 5,000 ewes mated. So there's a self-replacing ewe flock, and the older castrate ewes are mated to a crossbred. There's opportunity livestock trading. There are 3 full-time equivalent owners. So one works 60 hours a week and the other works 60 hours a week. That's the 3 full-time equivalents. The farm business supports 2.5 families, pretty well organised. Roles and responsibilities are clear. There's a family board that separates strategy and management. We have an annual general meeting of all professional advisors. Risk is identified and mitigated with written policies, not reacting to drought and not reacting to price commodity crashes, for example, but actually roll the policy out and this is what we do. It's paying 22 cents in the dollar tax, and the 21 year it's paying 19 cents in the dollar tax. And an opportunity came up to purchase some land. Oops. Backwards. Use the same metric. I'll use the same metric. Let's look at taxable income inventory change. Let's project gross profit management. Let's look at the direct cost to project a gross margin. Let's look at their overheads to project a profit. And let's look at interest to project a net farm profit. A little bit in this. Tax year 19, 20, 21, 22. Okay, so they're the tax financials, but I've changed real livestock values there. I've put in a management depreciation rate here. They've got about 600,000 machinery. I've actually removed the subsidies of imputed labour. So I've got income. And this year here, so this was presented to bank. So this is to 22 year. This is the final year in year out endpoint when we purchase land, stock it up, and get to our year in year out, what our year in year out looks like. So income's improving. We would expect that if we're going to buy more land. We've purchased some livestock. We've got some management adjustments. Our direct costs increase a little bit. Our gross margin improves, which is what we would expect. We're not leasing. Our overheads are reasonably well controlled. We're not buying any more machinery to run more ewes, so it's a scalable bolt-on. We don't need more people. We don't need more machinery, so it's an accretion addition. There's a little bit of wobbling around in imputed labour. So here I've had to pay them more because they underpaid what they're worth commercially, and this year they actually paid themselves more than what they were worth. There's their operating profit. There's their interest bill, the big jump up in interest bill when we purchased land. There's their net farm profit. Okay? Is there a profit there for this business? What are the choices for this business? Reinvest on farm, reinvest off farm, repay some debt, pay themselves better. Here is the balance sheet. Same years again, 19, 20, 21, 22, the year in, year out. Land values, livestock have increased, purchases, kept the plant and equipment the same. Closing assets, 10, 14, 16, 19, 33. Debt's gone up, there's our purchase of land. Closing liabilities, there's our net worth. True profit is a change in net worth. Someone was listening, that's excellent. Thanks, good job, Graham. So there's our net worth. Look at the net worth, 8 million to 17 million. 1, 2, 3 years. 3 years doubled. The rule of 72 says 72 divided by 3 is, what's that? 24. So it's a 24% compound average growth rate for 3 years to get your assets doubling. A very common situation. So equity ratio has wobbled around a little bit, but not too bad. Here's the business profitability. This is what I want to get to. Business profitability. Benchmark at 5%. Even when they purchase the land and they're year in, year out, they're only at 2.4% return on assets. They have been 2.5%. What does the bank think about funding that business? Well, in terms of interest coverage, how many times does profit cover interest and borrowing cost? More than 2 is the benchmark, so we've got green ticks there, we're nearly there. Repayment capacity, we've had a history of desiring to repay debt. So one of the choices this business has made with profit is we're repaying debt, and we're repaying debt so that we can buy the next property. We're repaying debt because it's a bit of resilience up your sleeve for the non-rainy day, and we're repaying debt because it's favourable with the bank. So the bank think pretty favourably about this business. There's lots of green in there. but profit-wise, it's not there. So what are the three things we have to do to improve profit? You didn't think you'd have to turn up today and answer questions, did you? You thought you're just in for a cruisy day today, just sit here and I'll... What were the three things that improve profitability? Increasing turnover, increasing gross margin, and we're all one of them in the room, overheads, right? Reducing overheads. So here's this business. Let me go to this one. Let's remove the noise. They're the three things that improve profitability: turnover, gross margin, overheads. Which lever do I have to pull with this business to improve profitability? Which one's the green ones? Which one's the red ones? Right, it's turnover. It stands out like the nose on your, like the proverbial nose on your face. So it's very easy. We've got a consistent focus with this business of improving turnover, production, price, getting paid better, producing more. More lambs born, less ewes dead, etc., improving production. So that sort of marries together the combination of how do we design our business from profitability, and in summary, use taxation financials, change four things, project management financials, work out overheads, turnover, gross margin, look at it with a ratio. One of them will stand out, go to work on what needs to be done. How am I going for time, Jody? Same business, investment decision making. So with decision making, some facts. Farm business capital, so what you can spend on a farm is bottomless. True or false? True. Probably better ask true or false questions, isn't it? Right, true or false? True or false? Access to capital is scarce. True or false? It's easy to get capital, but it's not unlimited, is it? Like, there's plenty of things you can invest in, right? But eventually capital will get scarce. The bank won't just keep lending you money. I think, even though there's profits and there's cash in the red meat industry at the moment, I think it's still prudent to be investing wisely. What you do in the good years determines how you survive the poor years. Let's look at a little bit of a matrix I use in terms of assisting clients to work out objectively where to invest. Now, if they've got profit, they've got the four choices. If they don't have profit, we've got one choice. We've got to go to the bank to borrow. There's our choices. We can invest off farm, perhaps for succession, to live a bit better, to diversify our asset base. We can invest on farm to improve productivity, profitability. So we look at return on, I look at return on capital. Increasingly, retaining staff is a key metric, and increasingly I'm helping clients to invest in things that keep staff, because there's a big cost in not having staff and a big cost in employing staff. I've just employed two accountants, and I'm right down the bottom of the J curve. You know the J curve? Your efficiency. I'm right down the bottom there. I've got to train them up, and I'm not doing things and I'm burning the midnight out, but eventually you get up. So there's a big cost in turning over staff, so why don't we keep them? And we can invest on farm in things that improve labour efficiency, and after lunch we're going to have a look at a whole lot of things that can improve labour efficiency. But to me, we do these things in investing on farm because they have a good return on capital, because it helps to retain staff, because it improves labour efficiency, and I should add safety there as well. And then, if it gives us a tax deduction, to me that's the cherry, not the cake. Right? It's not the reason we invest in capital equipment to get a tax deduction. It's got to achieve one or all of these metrics too. Investing in yourself, just come out of the children's education years, right? Some of you are entering it, so there might be some balance sheet items there in terms of investing in children, beach houses, farmhouse, so looking after yourself, and then repaying debt. To me, repaying debt is about a future asset purchase, and it's also about business resilience. So there's the four objective measures I use with clients to look at where we invest profit. What's the best return on investment? Does it help us improve labour efficiency? Does it assist us with safety? Right? And does it help us keep staff? And here's that same client case study farm. So we pull out in our April meeting, we pull out for our budget, we pull out our capital expenditure plan. We've got our budget, we know what our profit is, and we work out how much we're going to spend in what area. There's our items: containment, feeding, fencing, hay, shed. You can see the list. There's some off-farm items. So we've got a deliberate idea to put 15 grand into an investment trust that invests in shares to help with children's education. We've got two and a half families, but we've got 6 kids to educate. So we're starting now in terms of putting some money away to invest to grow that pool. And here's principal repayments. So all these things are the farm, we're investing back in the farm. There's the off-farm, and there's the off-farm, and there's the self perhaps, and there's principal repayments. There's our items. I asked the client to prioritise them, A, B, C. So C is not even going to get a list in, not going to get a look in. We look at what our spend could be. We assess the income that we're going to make, the costs we're going to save, divide it by the cost of the asset to give us an estimated return on capital. We list that down, and then some other things. We get some labour efficiencies, some safety things by doing that. That immediately rules out, you know, if we've only got, didn't think about this, but if we've only got, there's the total expenditure, but if we've only got 50,000, then we might pick, there's the best return on investment there and there. That's about 50. So we might do that one because the sheep handler's got the best return on investment and the containment feeding. So there's our 50,000 spend. That gives us the best return on investment for the year. So just an example of putting a bit of objectivity into working out where to invest capital, rather than at the accountant's office and the accountant says, oh, you're going to pay $300,000 tax this year. Sorry. And the accountant says what? The accountant says what? Oh, well, you know, that tractor that's 2 years old, you could turn that over, and as long as you can land it on the place in time, you can get an instant asset write-off for that. And, oh, the headers, you know, that's 15 years old. Can you land that? So rather than having the taxation minimisation focus, we can have the profit optimisation focus, decide this way objectively, and then tell our accountant what we're going to do and ask them to minimise tax then. To finish on, 10 principles of the top 10%. So in working with clients for the last 20 years, what are some principles that I've learnt? Look, there's no quick fix, particularly when it comes to overheads. There's no quick fix. If overheads talk about machinery and talk about people, right, it's pretty hard, and family farms, it's pretty hard to talk about, you know, people exiting, etc. So succession planning is a big part. Machinery, redesigning businesses and overheads is a big issue. So there's no quick fix, and often people need some help and assistance along the way with some of that, with some assistance there. But you have to fully utilise overheads to get into the top 10%, right? So you've got to fully utilise overheads. So my metric's about $600,000 of turnover, gross profit per full-time equivalent. So that business that I showed you, 3 full-time equivalents at about 1.675 year in, year out turnover, 3 full-time equivalents is just under 600,000 per full-time equivalent. It's just about right-sized for the labour. I tend to find specialisation focuses energy rather than diversification. If you've only got one sheep enterprise and you like doing sheep and it's suited to your country, you've got to be profitable, otherwise you're out of business. Whereas if we've got sheep, cattle, crop, 16 different enterprises, it's pretty hard to be good at everything. Some people can be. So specialisation focuses energy, helps to reduce overheads, and it keeps it simple. You've got to have a base scale of turnover being the top 10%. That's 600K per full-time equivalent. Thanks, Jody. 2.5% for that business. I reckon that's the new benchmark with land prices doubling in 3-4 years. My 5% return on asset benchmark, I think the new benchmark's 2.5%. I reckon if we benchmark them, they'll be top 20% clients at 2.5% return on asset. You improve gross margin ratio through efficient conversion of direct cost to income. Leasing works if it improves utilisation of overheads. So again, leasing, not having to add machinery, not having to add people, etc. If it improves your unit of efficiency, it can work. Borrowing and gearing is important, so not too much and not too little. And really the question there is what sort of finance ratio are you comfortable with? If someone's losing sleep at night with debt, then we've got a debt problem. Excellent systems of risk management drive profitability. We match enterprises to our environment and personalities. You do well at what you like doing, I tend to find, and you do well with enterprises that suit your country and that you can do lots of. And they're the three key metrics for business profitability, I find. Do what you like doing, do lots of it, and do what's suited to your country. And once you're in the top 10%, turnover, getting bigger, just drives profitability. I might finish here. Quick summary. The model you choose picks your profitability. You can pick taxation minimisation, but remember as well that you've got less choices. If you pick a profit optimisation model, there's choices for you. If we need to redesign our business for profit, it's about turnover, gross margins and overheads. We've got to address them directly. With profit, we've got those choices. Capital is scarce, the opportunities aren't. Perhaps let's think about a little bit of objectivity in terms of our decision making about where we invest in capital this year. And maybe the 4 metrics I've introduced. What's the return on investment for the sheep handler, for the tractor? What's the labour efficiency with the sheep handler with the tractor? Is there safety issues? And does it help us keep staff with shiny new toys? They may be 4 metrics that assist you in terms of decision making. Where do investments get sourced from? You've got to think about whether it's profit or from borrowings. And finally, the last things I find is that we're working with family farms. Other non-things that I've already discussed that determine profitability are families functioning well, families that function well work well together, families that don't, and also well-being. So if there's well-being issues there, that can affect business profitability and survivability. Jody, that's me.